Welcome to A.B.E, the All Black Everything Arts Festival. I'm glad you're here. I'm Kenneth McLaurin. I'm going to be your virtual host for this event. I'm really excited, but before we get started, we're going to do the obligatory thank you to our sponsors for this event. I'd like to let you know that this program is made possible in part or in full-ish, with funds from the Decentralization Program, which is a re-grant program of the New York State Council for the Arts, with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. This program is also administered by the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County. So hey, thank you to the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County, CAP. We really appreciate you. We also want to thank our other sponsor, Tompkins Trust Company. Thank you very much for your financial support to this event. Without you, we would not be able to have as many talented Black artists as part of this festival. So thanks to both of you. And now, on to this event. This next artist, I'm really excited to have her as a part of the A.B.E. All Black Everything Arts Festival. Emily Sanders Hopkins. Emily is a writer, editor, and illustrator whose cartoons have appeared in the New Yorker Magazine and other national publications. She's the author of Emily Writes Back, an advice column. She's also a book ghostwriter and an essayist. She has an essay in the New York Times 2020 notable book, Pretty Bitches. Emily has also served as an editor, marketing writer, senior editor, and contributing editor at numerous national magazines and online media companies, including Women 2.0, We Are Teachers, Scholastic Choices, Ezra, Scholastic Instructor, and the Johns Hopkins University Magazine. She was a fact checker at the New York Magazine and later editor and publisher at the Ithaha Magazine. Emily has also written over a dozen short screenplays, including The Bookery, which she has directed and produced with friends. I'm really excited to have Emily here with us. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Emily Sanders Hopkins.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this Black Arts Festival, which was your brainchild, and I feel very honored to be invited. And it's great to be Black, even if just a little bit. So I want to read two things tonight for you today. One is a little excerpt from a novel that I'm working on, not quite done yet, about Donald Trump's imaginary friend, Velvet. And Velvet gets fired. And so this is a little excerpt from the book in progress about what happens a little after she gets fired from her job as his imaginary friend. And then after that, I'm going to read something else. This is how I left the White House. I had spent months as a flickering apparition. The housekeepers and ushers and Secret Service were starting to catch glimpses of me. They rubbed their eyes, blinked, looked away and back at me again, began to rush towards me or shrink away, but then I would be invisible again, and they would stop, shoulders drooping, head hanging forward, deep sighs of self-criticism and doubt. They thought they were losing it. Donnie could always see me, though, of course, but he wanted me out of his life. He had Svetlana now. She was truly a marvel. Even I could see that. Everything repellent about her was also somehow attractive. Her thick, fake Russian accent, the robotic way she turned her head to look at something, to look at me, the way she had of narrowing her eyes, and the glitter of her eyes, which were beer bottle green. It was almost as if she were computer animated. She was only 3 feet tall, small enough to ride on his shoulders the way I had loved to do in my time when I had been miniature. Plus, she had humongous breasts and an impossibly small waist. That's what he must love. But I also know he loved how mean she was to him. I'd seen her pinch him, spit into his water at nearly every meeting, stick out her bare leg and trip him so he stumbled and almost fell. I could do that too, I said to him as he lumbered down the hall one day, flanked by 2 staffers and Svetlana. I just don't feel like it, but I could. His frown deepened, but he said nothing. Fine. Then why didn't he kill me off already? I couldn't understand it. It was as if the rules had changed. One day, I was haunting the cabinet room, leaning against the wall by the closed door. They were having a meeting inside, and I wanted to observe, but of course I couldn't open the door. I'd learned about the meeting too late. I felt hot. I wanted to pull off a sweatshirt, but I wasn't wearing a sweatshirt. That feeling was my own chubby body. I tugged on my belt to let some cool air from the floor move up my skirt and make it past my waist. I wasn't used to so much bouncy softness where my arms met my sides. This must be how Donnie feels, this unavoidable padding. I yawned to pop my ears. Something about being fat made me feel I couldn't hear as well. I pressed my ear harder against the door. I could make out each voice from the meeting, but I couldn't tell what words they were saying, just the speed and tone. They were all trying to sound calm, so manly, so matter of fact, but they didn't fool me. Soon I was joined by 3 staffers. They stood outside the door with me, their arms full of folders. The receptionist got a call and put the receiver down quietly, and after a moment she told us, "You may go in." I stepped aside. One of the staffers readjusted the papers in his arms, grasped the doorknob firmly, and we all followed him into the room. At our first sight of this room 2 years earlier, Donnie had snorted with gleeful scorn. What a dumb room. Small, overpowered by the table, stodgy drapes, a big cabinet at the head of the table filled with a few ugly objects. We'd been in better hotel conference rooms. Today's wasn't a full cabinet meeting. There were some empty chairs around the table and empty chairs against the walls. The 3 staffers worked for the general, and they sat against the wall behind him, facing me in the door. One handed him a folder. I didn't take a seat. I just stood inside the room, the Secretary of the Treasury seated in front of me. Donnie was across the table, and his eyes flickered up at me, and he scowled. Svetlana sat on the table facing Donnie. Her back was to me, but I could tell that she was swinging her legs flirtatiously. She was wearing an S&M getup, all black leather straps crisscrossing her bare back. So lame and obvious, no imagination. He was letting things slide. I was equal parts embarrassed for him and angry. "Mr. President, you might want to consider letting the matter settle itself, as it were," the general was saying. He held out his hand and smiled with the left side of his mouth. It was a charming smile, very unassuming. I felt myself smiling back at the general, even though he wasn't talking to me and couldn't see me. His uniform jacket rose up a bit above his shoulders. Had the general lost weight? "General, I appreciate that, I do," Donnie said, "but the time for that kind of thing has come and gone. Now it's all up to me. Might not be how they wanted it, but that's the reality." "Hey, Svetlana," I called out. Donnie's eyes shot up to me. Svetlana froze but didn't turn around. "Yo, little Slavic stripper girl," I said, "turn around." Donnie's face was dark red. He was really furious. Why? At the interruption? Because I called her a stripper? Yes, he was angry that I wasn't more deferential to his grand replacement of me. "This isn't about you, Donnie," I said to him, although it was a bit. "It's between me and her. Pay attention to your generals and don't worry about us." Finally, she twisted around and looked at me over her shoulder. "Jess, what is it? Were you not fired a long time ago? How are you so fat now and ugly?" "My weight and looks and age are merely a manifestation of my great fortitude and that I don't give a fuck anymore," I told her. "Go away," she said, turning her back away from me like I was nothing. I lunged forward, prepared to rip her small body from the table and throw her toward the windows with all of my might. But as I stretched out my hand to her unsuspecting back, the men to Donnie's left and right gasped and shouted, both staring right at me with great shock. They could see me. I was slammed to the table from behind by someone who must have weighed 250 pounds. The edge of the table dug into my shins. Someone was pinning me there with his own body. My cheek pressed hard against the table, squishing my left eye mostly shut. I hadn't been touched at all for months since Donnie kicked me out of my own bed. It's hard to explain, but the weight of this person, though it hurt me, felt like a benediction. I have a body, you have a body, we both have bodies, we are in this together. Everyone was standing now, shouting. A staffer against the wall behind me was wailing and crying like someone had just died in front of her, but I was still very much alive. I can smell your breath, therefore I am. Get the fuck off me, I said. It came out huskier and less angry than I intended. There wasn't enough air in my lungs, and I wasn't angry, that angry. Then someone yanked me up off the table to a standing position. Donnie's chair was empty. They'd whisked him away already. The shouting continued. Someone was saying, "How'd she get in? How'd she get in?" The Secret Service guy who'd lain on top of me on the table thrust me against two other guards who dragged me out of the room down the hall, these dark little hallways with their spindly early American chairs and their dark paintings of fruit and trees and waterfowl and their fussy lamps had been my home, though nobody knew it. I knew every inch. I had counted the clovers on the Kennedy china displayed in the china room. Who else knew how many gold-headed upholstery nails rimmed the four matching chairs in the blue room anteroom? And I hadn't just counted things, I'd also studied people. I'd shadowed most of the Secret Service detail, stood next to them as they urinated. I'd sat on every desk, looked into every eye closely, noticed golden flecks in the hazel eyes and the dark gray petals in the blue eyes. I had looked down every woman's dress, followed every housekeeper's rounds, read memos over people's shoulders, heard countless murmured jokes and under-the-breath complaints. Everyone was so unhappy. Everyone was waiting for something to fix itself. I was familiar with both the specific and the general of all the major spheres, domestic, political, and bodily. But I was marched like an intruder out of the West Wing as they talked fast, their voices shaky with fear. We were joined at each intersection of hallway by more stern men in suits. A heavyset middle-aged woman had somehow made her way into the inner sanctum of the White House and threatened the president's life. I was going to be interrogated, and then I was going to prison. I swallowed the bubbling laughter down, but I couldn't help but smile. So far, it was the best day of my life, maybe the first day of my life. So that's the part of the book that I'm working on, the novel that I'm working on called Velvet. And this next thing, this is changing gears, something, thanks, Melanie. Melanie, something very different. This is from an essay that I wrote in 2015, a few days after Sandra Bland died. Sandra Bland was, wrongfully arrested and put into a jail in Texas. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And this is what I wrote about my reflections about her death. To me this week, Sandra is a little sister, proud of her maxi dress. I like the way she points out to Brian that she probably doesn't have a weapon hiding anywhere since, after all, she's wearing a maxi dress. Exulting in the open road, a new town, a fresh cigarette, and certain knowledge of constitutional law. All is right in the world, little sis. The world is your oyster. To Brian, that was the cop, Sandra is a smoker. She's black. She's a suspect. She's disrespectful, a loose cannon, infuriating. Frankly, she's a threat to the fabric of society if she so little understands how she's supposed to act with him. He would never date her, never vote for her. Who would? No one he can imagine. She would have to speak in a British accent or like a white Texan and be draped in many-faceted emeralds, or be introduced to him as a foreign millionaire entrepreneur who holds several patents for medical devices she has invented, to be afforded personhood of the level requiring manners and kindness, attraction, amusement, chivalry, the fucking benefit of the doubt. In the middle of the afternoon on a Friday. Or maybe This is my recipe for unassailable personhood, wealth, exoticism, and achievement in a technical field. For Brian, she could have had merely the local feel, soft-spoken and humble and afraid, quick to apologize. That would have worked too. To Sandra, he's a white cop, a chance to practice being unbowed by unjust and rude authority. I think she thought it would go well. I think she thought he'd be like, damn, she has a point. She doesn't feel compassion for him, that he has always relied on the approval of manly men and the flutter of grateful women. She doesn't know how many lives he's saved in his old job as a firefighter. That was his job, not hers. How mean his dad was to him, how much his dogs love him, how attuned he is to God's green earth, especially wide and shallow rivers. I'm just guessing here. I don't know the particulars of what is lovable and pitiable and relatable about Brian, but there must be something. To have flicked on a turn signal on an empty road with nothing but a cop car rushing up behind you, that would be almost ridiculous, showy subservience. The tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock in an otherwise quiet afternoon. Why couldn't he see you? Why couldn't he see that you were the star of this grainy video? The idealistic heroine, sassy like your mother called you, practically a lawyer. Maybe he never in his life saw a movie starring a Black woman. In fact, in his entire lifetime of American media exposure, which had included several million magazine covers, hundreds of thousands of television episodes, a few thousand movies, and hundreds of books, he has hardly had to think of Black people as beautiful, smart, or equally human and entitled above half a dozen times. And so he's never dreamed of a world where you are human and smart and brave, if a little rash, and he is the villain. Or of a world where you are reasonable and he is the crazy one. Why couldn't he just see your point, that you'd only changed lanes for him? Did it ever occur to him that you had recently decided to dedicate your life to fighting police violence against Black people? That you felt called by God, even, to give your life's work to this cause? Then the knee in your back and the twisting of your fine-boned wrist, his rage at being questioned, taunted. He looks exactly like a big-bellied rapist, an overgrown frat boy brother losing his temper out there in the open, a spoiled child. You can picture him as a toddler, his baby penis jiggling as he stomps around mad. You call him a pussy, but naked little baby boy crying and stomping would have been more apt. Either insult would fit because, in short, he wasn't being much of a man. A pretty neat trick, turning a nothing stop into a roadside tussle, assault, and arrest in broad daylight. Good day, sir. Then suddenly the jail cell, and a whole system waiting there, engraved in cinder block a billion years. Guards who can't give you the time of day. What time is it? Panic, towering rage, burns like death. You can taste someone's blood. Everyone acts like they've taken the full measure of you, and it ain't much. You have never been so thoroughly humiliated. I had a cousin who killed herself in the wilderness where she lived. I've heard that she went months, sometimes without seeing another human. I didn't even know her. But when I learned of her death, I caught a whiff of the flavor of it, the way you sometimes do, the way I did with Sandra's death in the jail in Texas. And this is what it felt like in my imagination. When the whole wide world thrums around you, wild and immense and implacable, eternal and gorgeous, and without pity, you can bump up against your own death. It might not come today, but all the endless trees, the voiceless sky stretching up who knows how far and wide, everywhere you look, you see things and systems that will outlive you by a lot. And you see how there are a billion ways you could die, falls, infections, water you could drown in. Well, really anything could happen. You can feel your death, especially if you don't have enough joy. You can feel death walking alongside you patiently, and it feels powerful because death is powerful. It is ultimate. It defines your whole life. And there's not a single thing more mysterious or unassailable. And so there is a dark glamour, a power that can be claimed in that one moment of death. And when we meditate on this truth about death, it can hook onto the back of our minds like a spell or a worm, like an awesome in the original meaning possibility or inevitability. I guessed that my cousin's suicide was a rash succumbing to this ever-present pulse in a moment with not enough joy or hope to protect her from it. When you are yanked from your car, your day, manhandled and shouted at, pressed into a car and sped to your incarceration, you stay sunblind for a while and then your eyes adjust. Your heart races faster than on your first job interview. This is your first jail, your first suicide. You cannot catch your breath. You cannot stop crying. You hadn't planned on sleeping on a jail bed in the dark. The pillow is disposable and has no pillowcase. There are no sheets or blankets. You can hear the girls across the hall in the other cells talking and laughing. There's a whole civil... Oops, technical difficulties. Back where we were. This is your first jail, your first suicide. You cannot catch your breath. You cannot stop crying. You hadn't planned on sleeping in a jail bed in the dark. The pillow is disposable and has no pillowcase. There are no sheets or blankets. You can hear the girls across the hall in the other cells talking and laughing. There's a whole civilization in here. It feels as certain, maybe, and as intractable as the Alaskan wilderness. It stretches forever in every direction as far as a young American eye can see. Where's your purse, your cigarettes? What day is it? The second day is long and strange. They take you to another room to eat food so bad that you are reminded of the insult. Your wrists hurt and your gut. You haven't used the bathroom yet. Maybe your shoulder is broken. It might as well be. You'll never use it again. You think of slavery, Mandela, King, Supreme Court decisions, Black Lives Matter, the last episode of America's Got Talent you saw an eon ago, and all of those things seem so much more dignified and real than this sham. You remember the long highway that got you here, with all the Sheetz and McDonald's and Wendy's, and you picture the apartment you were supposed to move into yesterday. You think of how bad you must look. They took your dress. They actually stripped you of your clothing and made you put on prison scrubs. You see yourself through the cop's eyes, or imagine you do. A dumb, loud black girl mouthing off, so dumb she ends up in an orange jumpsuit that very same day. He's back at home now, watching TV, maybe drinking a cold beer, wearing jeans, being white, feeling justified and good about himself. What did he do with your car? Your phone? What day is it? You pray to God, but you cannot hear the reply. Or God's reply sounds like your current predicament. Silence and jail sounds. Hisses, thumps, air conditioning, doors opening and closing, guards gossiping on the phone to friends, hums of a wall clock. Then the second long night. Then Sunday, day 3. Is it 3 or 4? You can't keep track anymore. Tick tock, tick tock. You are choking on shame and rage. For 3 days and a morning, you have been replaying the embarrassment and pain that happened out on that grass by the road. With every replaying, you get sicker. You remember how even the female officer didn't see that you were in the right, didn't see that you were a person. Sunday is utterly unacceptable to you. You have been drained in 3 short days of all your confidence and joy and hope and moxie. They've left you nothing but powerless and scared and full of rage at the utter injustice. From a turn signal to 3 nights and 4 days in jail in the dark, stripped of your own real life. You think, I'll leave you nothing but my body. Monks have set themselves on fire. A grand, ultimate protest grows in your disordered mind. You can taste your death. It tastes exactly like death. Sandra, you are a 28-year-old in a bit of a fix. It's Monday, and pretty soon you'll get in front of the judge and you'll reach someone on the phone and paperwork will get signed and your family will come. This will be a crazy story to tell later. You can look back on this in a month, a decade. Don't you want children? Don't you want to smoke another cigarette in your new apartment? Didn't your mother ever tell you that things would look different in the morning or in a week? Just pay them some money and have this blip of badness on your record. The torn ligament in your arm. The explanations at work if you still have that job. The world is your oyster. A neat trick, turning a stupid cruelty into a national day of mourning and outrage. Everyone in the world can see your point now. The plastic bag is thin but strong. Blood pounds in your ears to a beat. Dumb, sweet, incorrect, final. Thank you. And if you'd like to read more of my writing, visit emilywritesback.com. Thank you.
And make sure to check out the rest of the artists and videos from A.B.E, the All Black Everything Virtual Arts Festival. Thanks, and see you later.